This is the Module 4 initial response video about ableism, ageism, and adultism. The first prompt is: in what ways does adultism, ageism influence the ways in which we design and deliver services and curriculum in higher education? Essentially, start with a definition. Adultism is a very long sentence in the book, so I abbreviated it. It's a systematic um, subordination of younger people who have relatively little opportunity through restricted access to goods, services, and privileges, and are denied access to participation in economic and political life of the society. On the face of it, as a parent, it's easy to immediately become a little defensive of that because when it comes to pertaining to individuals under the age of 18, a parent would quickly point out that many of those restricted goods, services, and privileges are, negative things such as porn, drugs, and alcohol. And some parents even go so far as to say that it's our job to, quote, protect, unquote, our children and our from these things. However, I think the book makes an excellent connections and some things I've never thought about as to how all-encompassing one area of control can take over other areas of a person's life. The book illustrates that many of the social ills, such as verbal abuse, child abuse, sexual abuse, corporate punishment, which is like spankings and various things like that, the militarization of schools, juvenile detentions. The book goes through a very long reading about zero tolerance and locking children up for drugs and fighting and such things. And then it had one line in there talking about predatory advertising, how adults target young people specifically through fashion and commercial and such things as that. That's really making me, rethink the control that we have over youth. As far as college students, the majority are legal adults. They can work, vote, join the services, pay taxes. They've clearly graduated to the first tier of adulthood, and they're beginning to become incorporated as adults into the democratic society. However, parents, teachers, administrators, real adults still stigmatize them as children. They are adults, but in a lot of people's eyes, not really. And, we generally blame the lack of life experience as the reason for this. However, we continue to systematically deny them that experience. This is probably the hardest part about, being a parent. But as a student, living in dorms, living on their own, customizing their futures, discovering their independence, I guess the go-to example is, FERPA, which was the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, which began to put power in students' hands. It requires students' consent for parents to be able to view their grades and official records, and more also it protects their medical records. So, it starts to put their health and their identities and such things as that in their hands. But, you know, it's an advancement. FERPA is an advancement against adultism, but universities could definitely do better. Um, the book gives examples on page 554 about how adultism in general affects secondary schools, and I think it applies to colleges. Um, primarily through the power dynamics of the professor-student binary. Punishment for unfairly for adult frustrations. That's a bit of like kick the dog things, as children and young people are typically weaker. You see a lot of adults vent their frustrations on them unfairly. In terms of grades, they're quantitative, they're rigid, they carry way too much weight. And in a way, this categorizes students as either smart or dumb. And also, it limits the students' control over their own education. There's so much to say about this subject that I've never really thought about, but we have to move on. The second prompt is why are you, or what are your experiences and understanding of the ways in which ableism affects the educational experiences and environment, students, staff, faculties, etc. You know, I've never thought about how much college is designed for able-bodied people. Um, which the book talks about how society is designed by able-bodied people for able-bodied people, and the primary intent of this is that it reduces disabled people's visibility. It pushes them from the public to the private sphere, so we don't see them. That's why you see handicapped people shop at Walmart at like 1 in the morning, and this is just including physical disabilities. There's other disabilities, psychological disabilities, various things such as that. And I do think that through technology and online degrees specifically, that colleges are beginning to do better on this front with such programs as, text reading programs, which the book talks to text programs for the deaf, the ability to work in an individualized pace and a customized pace for degrees and courses, and mainly not having to physically attend college. That's definitely an advantage for disabled bodied people who have difficulties in traveling. um, this part was kind of skimpy in this presentation. There's just as much to say about this, but for the link of brevity, I'm going to stop now, and I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say.